Welcome from the Genealogical Society of Salem County. My name is Bonny Beth Elwell, and I am the Vice President of the Society. I am excited to present our next installment of virtual programming. Today I will be explaining how to plot a deed using Tract Plotter. Previously I explained how to access deeds on Family Search. Today we're going to examine one deed in more detail. This deed right here is a deed for my ancestor purchasing some property. This is located in Salem County Deed Book MM, page 247. I'm looking at this on Family Search. As you can see, it's on page 247, and this is the deed right here that we're going to look at today. To start with, let's go over the elements that are on a deed. According to the handout, the first element on the deed is the date of sale. So we're going to go back to the deed and look at that date. Look for the date at the beginning of the deed. Right here it says, let me zoom in a little here. This indenture made the 10th day of December in the year of our Lord, 1831. Okay, so that is the date of our deed, the 10th day of December, 1831. The next item in the deed is the grantor. This is the person or the persons selling the property. Right here it says it is between William Van Meter of the Township of Pittsgrove in the County of Salem and State of New Jersey and Rachel, his wife, on the one part. So those two people are the first party. They're the ones selling the property. They are the grantors, William Van Meter and his wife Rachel. It also gives information about where they're from, the Township of Pittsgrove. The next item on the deed is the grantee, the person or persons buying the property. In this case, the grantee is Isaac Johnson II. It says here, and Isaac Johnson II of the same place of the other part. So far we have the date of the deed, December 10th, 1831, the grantor, William Van Meter and Rachel, his wife, and the grantee, Isaac Johnson II. Isaac Johnson II was my ancestor. After that, it goes on to the rest of the deed information. This will include the cost of the sale, the location of the property, and eventually we're going to get to the meets and bounds. Right now, let's look at the next two sections. What it says next is that it witnesseth at the said party of the first part, that would be William Van Meter and Rachel, his wife, and for and in consideration of the sum of $1,600 lawful money, okay, there's our amount, $1,600, will and truly by the said party of the second part to the said party of the first part, and at and before the unsealing and delivery of these presents, the receipt whereof is hereby acknowledged. Okay, so therefore he has in fact paid the $1,600 to the first party. Hath, because he's paid it, hath granted, bargained, sold, aliened, effeoffed, and conveyed, and by these presents doth grant, bargain, sell, alien, effeoff, and convey until the said party of the second part, and to his heirs and assigns. What? What are they selling? All that tract plantation known by the name of Eliezer Mayhew, Esquire, Homestead Farm, situate in the township, county, and state aforesaid. Okay, so right now this section just told us two things. It told us what they sold the property for, which was the $1,600, and where that property is located. The property is the Eliezer Mayhew Esquire Homestead Farm, and it's situated in the township, county, and state aforesaid. Now, it doesn't actually tell us the township, county, and state right there. It says it was said before. If we look above, we can see that that was, therefore, the township of Pittsgrove in the county of Salem in the state of New Jersey. So far we found the first several pieces of the deed. We found the date, we found the grantor, the grantee, the cost, the location, and now we're getting to the meets and bounds. This is the part we're going to focus on the most. Okay, so it says it is bounded as follows. Here it then describes the property. Instead of reading this, I'm just going to pause for this. We're going to get back to it later. Notice that it starts with beginning right here, and then it describes the property for some time, and then finally says, right here, it says containing 86 acres and 25 hundredths of an acre, the same more or less. Okay, so it described the land and then told how big the property was, 86 acres. So if we look back here at our list, you see that the next thing after those meets and bounds is the size of the property. We found that when it said 86 acres. All right, the next item is going to possibly be the former owners, or particularly when the current grantor purchased it. So let's see. What does it say about that? Which land, okay, the land that was just described, as is set forth, is part of the homestead farm formerly belonging to Eliezer Mayhew, Esquire. Okay, so we now know the former owner. It was Eliezer Mayhew, Esquire. Thence sold by his executors to John Stoll, and reference thereunto being had, will more and fully at large appear. In other words, that's telling us that if we want more information about the property, we can look for Eliezer Mayhew, look for his executors, and look for John Stoll, all of who owned the property earlier. Oftentimes, this will even give you the book and page that the previous deed is located in, so you can find it fairly quickly. Okay, so that's the history of the property, the former owners. The next thing it'll have is the legal statements, what rights it conveys. Right here, this part. So this is fairly lengthy, usually in most deeds, and usually you don't need to pay too much attention to it. This is what it's saying about the legal statements. Together with all and singular the buildings, improvements, rights, liberties, privileges, herediments, and appurtenances in the same belonging or in any wise appertaining, and the versions and etc., remainder, allowances, issues, profits thereof, and every part and parcel, and also the state right, title, interest, possession, claim, demand whatsoever in the law, etc., etc. Everything having to do with the premises and this, and it's all being conveyed unto the said party of the second part, his heirs and assigns, etc., etc., and the said party of the first part, their heirs, etc., do grant and agree. If we go to the next page, we can see the rest. Okay, here at the top. And with the said party of the second part, they will not suffer any act or, sorry, it's a little hard to read here, or thing to be done whereby the premises aforesaid are encumbered by title, the same conveyed to the party of the second part, freely and clearly, etc., conveyed to the same premises, etc., to the said party of the second part, his heirs and assigns against lawful claim, etc., etc., etc. And then finally we get to the part, in witness whereof the said party of the first part doth hereunto set their hands and seals the day and year above written. So this is the next element of the deed, which is the signatures. We have William Van Meter and Rachel Van Meter's signatures. Now this is the recorded copy of the clerk's office, so this is not their actual signatures. It's a copy of them, but the original deed would have their real signatures and their real seals. It also includes the signatures of the witnesses. All right. Finally, we have the acknowledgement, which is performed by a notary when the deed is recorded. That's this section down here. So this, once the deed was taken to the clerk's office to be recorded, this was filled out by the notary. It says, be it known that on the 10th day of December in the year of our Lord 1831, before the subscriber, one of the judges in the common pleas, etc., personally appeared William Van Meter and Rachel his wife, the grantors within named. The within indenture being just setter and satisfied that the same named grantors as named are then do acknowledge that they in fact seal it. It's basically proving that they really are the ones that wrote the deed. And they also interview the wife without her husband being in the same room to ask her whether she was coerced to sign the deed or whether she did it willingly. That was standard procedure. And then finally, it's recorded by the clerk and it is officially complete. So that gets us through the acknowledgement. And that's the elements of the deed: the date of the sale, the grantor, the one selling it, the grantee, the one buying it, the cost of the sale, the location of the property, the metes and bounds, which we're going to get into in a minute. Those are the dimensions of the property. The size of the property, usually in acres, the former owners, including when the current grantor purchased it, legal statements, what rights are conveyed, signatures, including witnesses, acknowledgement performed by a notary when the deed is recorded. So let's focus some more on the metes and bounds now. So the metes and bounds, again, have various elements. They have a starting point, they have a direction, the degrees, the bearing, a distance, and an ending point. And neighboring properties may be mentioned along the way. So let's see what this is like in real life. So going back to our deed, and let's go back to the first page. Okay, so over here, we had William Van Meter and wife to Isaac Johnson II. We're going to go here where it said bounded as follows. Beginning. Now, as I showed on the worksheet, the starting point is usually triggered by the words beginning or thence. Okay, so going back here, we see beginning at. This is the very first call, as it's called, of the deed. It starts with beginning at a large walnut tree. So there's our first point, our starting point, a large walnut tree. In the center of a lane, in the line of James Van Meter. Okay, so we have an exact location for this tree. It's in the center of a lane in the line of James Van Meter. It's also a corner to the lands of Nancy Mayhew. And then it tells you what to do, where to go from there. So you have a starting point, and then you need to know where to go. Where to go is the direction, the degrees, and the bearing. Okay, so we're starting at this walnut tree, and then it tells us where to go. Running by the said Van Meter's land, we're going to go north 15.5 degrees west 63 chains to a stake. Okay, so the direction we're going is north, and then that could be either north or south. And then it tells us how many degrees. It may include minutes and seconds. So here we have 15.5 degrees. Okay, now since that says half a degree, since there's 60 minutes and a degree, a half of a degree would be 30 minutes. So it's 15 degrees, 30 minutes. That's our degrees. And then we have our bearing, which is going to be either east or west. And it tells us 15.5 degrees west. Okay, so we have north, 15.5 degrees west. Those are the first three parts, the direction, the degrees, and the bearing. And then it tells us how far. That's the distance. Okay, let's see how far it is. North, 15.5 degrees west, 63 chains to a stake corner. Okay, 63 chains is the distance that we're going to travel. So we're going to go north 15.5 degrees west for 63 chains. That's a unit of measurement. We'll get into the units of measurement more in the future. So we now have our direction, our degrees, our bearing, and our distance. And then the last part there is the ending point. Okay, this is often a corner, a stone, a stake, tree, etc. So what's it say? 63 chains to a stake corner in the line of Cook's land. Okay, so the stake is the ending point, but it also describes it as a corner because it's in the line of Cook's land. So as I said, it could also, the meets and bounds can also include information about neighboring properties. It might say along a road, along a fence, along a property line, or a creek. In this case, it's saying it's along a property line. The property line being Cook's land. So just like at the beginning, it said it was in the beginning point was in the line of James Van Meter. And then the other point, and also a corner of the lands of Nancy Mayhew. Then this other one, the ending point is in the line of Cook's land, and actually a corner to the line of Cook's land. Okay, then we see the word thence. Again, that's a trigger point for being the next starting point. So thence means we're going to go onwards from where we just left off. So the starting point is the previous ending point. So that we last left off at that stake corner, that means we're going to now start at that stake corner and go from there, where? And then it starts over again. So here's our first corner, beginning at the large walnut tree. Now we're at our second corner, that stake corner in the line of Cook's land. So from there, we're now going to go to the next place. Again, we have the same pattern. Thence, from that starting point, by the same, that tells us what land we're going next to, which is this case, it's Cook's land. South, that tells us the direction. 74 degrees, that tells us the degrees. West, that tells us the bearing. 14 chains and 80 links, that tells us the distance. To a stone, there's our ending point, and it describes it further as the corner to Stanford Mayhew's land. Okay, then we have the word thence. That means we're at our third corner. Thence, by the same, okay, here we're still by Stanford Mayhew's land. South, there's our direction, 14 degrees, there's our degrees. East, there's our bearing, 11 chains, there's our distance. To a stone corner, there's our ending point. Thence, okay, we're at our beginning. Still by the same, that tells us our neighboring properties. North, there's our direction, 75 degrees, there's our degrees. East, there's our bearing. One chain, there's our distance. To a stone corner, there's our ending point. Thence, beginning, still by the same, that tells us our neighboring properties. South, there's our direction, 15.5 degrees, there's our degrees. East, there's our bearing. 52 chains, there's our distance. To a corner, there's our ending point. And it describes it as in Nancy Mayhew's line. A corner in Nancy Mayhew's land. Thence, okay, we have yet another beginning point. By the same, tells us what the neighboring property is, still Nancy Mayhew's land. North, there's our direction, 74 degrees, there's our degrees. East, there's our bearing. 13 chains, there's our distance. 13 chains and 60 links, that's our distance. To the corner, just named, that is our ending point, and it is in fact our ending point, because it says the corner first named. So the first named corner is where we started. So we've now gone completely around the property, returned where we started, and we have completed the meets and bounds of this property. And then it says containing 86 acres and 25 hundredths of an acre. That's what we read earlier. And so all that property that was just described, going through each side of the property, eventually it came to 86 acres in the total. Okay, so that's a little summary of what the meets and bounds are like. Now I want to focus a little bit more on the distances. So there's a number of distances that you may find when you're looking at old deeds. Some may be, particularly more recent ones, may be listed in yards or feet. And remember, 3 feet equals 1 yard. And then, of course, if they happen to mention inches, which would be rare, 12 inches equals a foot. But more commonly in the old deeds, you'll see them listed as chains and links. Okay, this is an old unit of measurement. The important thing to know is that there are 100 links to one chain. So back here, let's look at this again where we saw something that said such and so many links. Okay, here it said 14 chains and 80 links. Okay, so that would be the same thing as 14.80 if you made a decimal out of it, because it would be 80 out of 100, which actually is 8/10. So you could write it as 14.8. That's the measurements between links and chains. You may also sometimes run across one of these words: rod, perch, or pole. All three of those words refer to the same thing. This is a unit of measurement in between a chain and a link. 1 rod equals 25 links. 4 rods equals 1 chain. So it's a fourth of a chain, or 25 of them make a link. 25 links make a rod. And again, perch and pole are other words for the same, that all refer to the same amount of distance. Now, if you want to convert between the chain system and the feet system, you can do that using either of these conversion equations. 1 rod, that measurement in between, is equal to 16.5 feet. 1 chain, the large unit, is equal to 66 feet. And 80 chains equals a full mile. You can use that to convert if you need to. Okay, so now we're going to actually get to Tract Plotter, the website. This is a free website. Everything, that you don't even have to create a login or anything. You can just use it whenever. I'm going to show it to you right here. It's www.tractplotter.com. Here you can see it, www.tractplotter.com. Okay, it's a really simple, basic site. There's no bells and whistles on this. It's just basic. So what you're going to do is you're going to use this to enter the information, each call. Now those were the, each line when we went through from one corner to another, that is called a call. All right, so we're going to enter each of those calls on a separate line over here. So this is Tract Plotter. It gives some directions. If you click here, you can read more directions. And as you can see here, it does have a smartphone version. But this box right here is the box that you're going to work on. Okay, this is the box that you enter everything. Right now it has some sample information. We don't need that sample information right now because I'm just going to walk you through how to do it. So I'm just going to select it and then I'm going to delete it. We're going to then enter in this box the information from our deed. So back to the directions. Okay, the first point is to enter each call on a separate line. Well, we went over that, but let's actually do it to see what it's like. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to enter the direction, the degrees, and the bearing with no spaces between them. Okay, we're going to abbreviate north, south, east, and west to just the first initial and S at E or W. It doesn't matter if you use capital or lowercase. The system doesn't doesn't differentiate between those. All right, and you're going to use decimal points if you need to include both degrees, minutes, and seconds. All right, so let's go back to this and we'll try it with the first call. Okay, so again, we started at the word beginning. Beginning is always the trigger word that you want to look for when you're looking at a deed. So it says beginning at a large walnut tree in the center of the lane and the line of James Van Meter and a corner to lands of Nancy Mayhew. All right, well, we're not going to write all that information. We're just looking for the direction, the degrees, and the bearing. So what's the direction? Beginning and running by said Van Meter's land north. There's our direction. North is our first direction. So we're going to go over here and type in an N for north. Okay, now we're going to look for the degrees. 15.5 degrees. Okay, so now if you recall, over here I said to use decimal points to separate degrees, minutes, and seconds. And remember, they're multiples of 60. So we're going to go here and enter in the degrees as degrees and minutes. So here it said 15.5 degrees. Okay, so we're going to enter 15, for that's how many total degrees. And then it had some less than a degree. It had a half of a degree. Now, a half a degree, because remember, they're multiples of 60, a half a degree is going to be 30 seconds. Okay, does that make sense? We have 0.30 because it's a half of 60, so it's 30. So we have 15.30 because 15 degrees and 30 minutes, since that's half of a full degree. Okay, the next item we're going to add, now that we have the direction, the degrees, we need the bearing, west. So it says north 15.5 degrees west. So we're going to go back to a tract plotter and enter in W for west. And that's our first line. Our first call, that is. Okay, we're going to hit enter to go to the next line. By the way, if there was ever a time when you had due north or due east, you can just enter N or E with no degrees. Okay, but right now we're just going to, oops, I'm sorry. We're not done that call yet, so let's back up here. Okay, the next part of the call is going to be the space before the distance, because we still need to add the distance. So we're going to add a space, and now add the distance. Okay, so a few things about distance. We're going to use decimal points to separate chains and lengths. And if there are chains and also rods, perches, and poles, you can convert the rods, perches, and poles to a decimal of a chain. So using the conversions of measurements that we are actually more here, where it said that a rod is equal to 25 lengths. So if it said 2 rods, we would change that to 50 lengths and then use it as a decimal. That sort of thing. Again, if there's feet plus inches, we're going to convert that to a decimal of a foot. So for instance, 3 feet and 6 inches, we would change to 3.5 because it's 0.5 of a foot. And then we're going to also abbreviate the measurements, yards to Y, feet to F, chains to C, rods to R, poles to P, lengths to L, like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter our distance. So let's see, we're here, north 15.5 degrees west, 63 chains. Okay, so 63 chains is our distance. So we're going to type in 63 and then the letter C for chains. Now we're going to enter the next line to enter the next call. Okay. So we're going to enter each call on a separate line. So we finished the first call. So now we can go back to the second call. Okay, so there we were, 63 chains to a stake corner, the line of Cooksland. Thence, there's our clue for the next call. Thence by the same, south 74 degrees west. Okay, so we have our direction, south. So we're going to go here and type in S for south. Our degrees, 74 degrees. So we're going to type in 74. West is our bearing. So south, 74 degrees west. We're going to type in W for west. Now we do a space before we enter our distance. Our distance is 14 chains and 80 lengths. Okay, so we have 14 chains and then 80 lengths. Well, remember, each length, there's 100 lengths in a chain, so we can turn that into a decimal very easily. It would be 14.80. Okay, so it's 14.80 chains. Okay. And back to our next call. Let's see. So we went south 74 degrees, west 14 chains and 80 lengths to a stone corner. Thence, okay, here we are on our next call. Thence by the same, south 14 degrees east. Okay, south 14 degrees east. So we're going to go back here, go to the next line, and enter south 14 degrees east. Back to this, south 14 degrees east. How far? 11 chains. So back to this, we're going to hit a space to separate our direction from our distance and enter 11C for 11 chains. And then enter onto the next line. 11 chains to a stone corner. Thence, okay, here's our next call. Thence, still by the same, north 77 degrees east. Okay, so north 77 degrees east is our next call. North 77 degrees east. And then we're going to go to space and then enter the distance. So back here, north 77 degrees east, 1 chain. Okay, so 1 chain. And we're going to hit enter to go to the next line. Okay, to a stone corner. Thence, there's our trigger. Thence by the same, south 15.5 degrees east. Okay, so we're going to go back here and enter south. And then it said 15.5, which if you remember is 15.30 because there's 30, because half of 60 degrees is 30 degrees. And I believe it was east after that, right? Let's double check. South 15.5 degrees east, yes. All right, and then our distance is 52 chains. Okay, so then we're going to put a space and enter 52C for chains. Then we're going to hit enter to go to the next line. Okay, 52 chains to a corner in Nancy Mayhew's land. Thence by the same, there's our trigger. Thence, okay, we have north 74 degrees east. North 74 degrees east. So north is our direction, 72 degrees is our degrees, east is our bearing. So north 74 degrees, not 72 degrees. It's important to get those numbers right. 74 degrees east, 13 chains, 60 links. Okay, so again, we have a decimal now, 13 chains, 0.60. 13.60. Oh, and we're going to put a space in between. 13.60 chains because 60 hundredths of a chain. 13 chains, 60 links. To the corner first named. That means we're back to the beginning, which means we're done. There we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total calls, each one on a separate line. Okay, so back to our directions. Once we've entered everything, we're going to hit submit. If we want to include labels beside each line of the finished map, you're going to first click Show Labels. I recommend this. It's useful if you do that. But if you don't like them, you can take it off. You can do it again by unchecking the box. So we're going to click the box that says Show Labels, and then we're going to hit Submit. This now has created a map of the property. It shows up in a box underneath the other box. So this is where we entered our meets and bounds, and then this is the completed plot of the deed. Shows up in yellow, and see how it labels each side, showing what the distance was so that we can know what we labeled where. Okay, let's see what else it tells us. It also includes the total square feet and the acreage. So if we look here, we can see that it's 391. Well, a very large number of square feet. I guess that's 3,900,000. Well, at any rate. Okay. And the other thing it shows is the acres. Notice that it's 89.76 acres. Now this is very useful because if we look back at our deed, it tells us that it contained 86 acres and 25 hundredths. So were we close? Yes, very close. Is it exact? No, it is not exact. But remember, these were hand measured, so you'll expect them to be off by a little bit. But the fact that it's 86 acres here and it's 89 acres here shows that we're at least in the right vicinity. Notice here also it shows the closure and how close it is. It didn't quite exactly match up. That's because of a deed in the original an error in the original survey, but that's okay. If it was very far off, then we would know we made a mistake. But because it is very close, notice it's a 0.3% error. That's really not bad at all, and we can assume that this is a correct mapping of the deed. Okay, if it was majorly off, we'd want to recheck the dimensions we entered. Sometimes also you might make a mistake by entering east when it should be west or west when it should be east. Also, sometimes the original deed will have a mistake like that. Now, this will not work for anything with curved lines, such as following the edge of a creek. It will only work for straight line deeds. And finally, what can you do with this deed, with this plat, that is, with the plot of the deed? It can be printed or saved as a PDF. So if we went up here and I'm using my browser here to select print, it would come up with the option to print it, or also I could, from the print menu, choose save as PDF and then save it onto my computer if I wanted to. Okay, I think that completes the tutorial of how to plot a deed using Tract Plotter. That's basically how it's done. There's of course variations along the way, but that's all you need to know to start with. This handout will also be posted along with the video so that you can use this to refer to with any questions. And thank you for watching, and I hope you'll consider supporting the Genealogical Society of Salem County. You can contact us for more information. You can visit our Facebook page, and hopefully at some point we'll be having programs in person again. Thank you very much, and good luck plotting your family deeds.